Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the new round of Jalsas as far as the PDM is concerned, what the opposition aims to do, and the government of course has dismissed these Jalsas, the PDM alliance, as a bunch of politically abandoned leaders. How will this work out as far as the future is concerned, considering of course there's also the talk of EVMs, the use of EVMs, electronic voting, and the fact that the government needs support there. How will that work out? Talk of no confidence motion, which again keeps coming up. The discussing as far as the strategy is concerned between the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and Maulana Fazlur Rahman as how to go forward. Will this round of protests manifest itself in anything more grander as far as the opposition is concerned, anything more effective? Remains to be seen. We'll be talking about that and overall strategy as far as the government is concerned, considering the issues of inflation, price hike, and other challenges that the government faces at this time, whether they think the opposition is one of them or not. All of those things today on Perspective. I have with me Amir Hussain, who's a political analyst, also an economist. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Rana Ehsan Afzal Khan, who's leader PPP. Thank you for joining us. And Ghazala Saifi, who's an M&A with PTI. Thank you for joining us today. Amir Saab, in your opinion, how do you see the protests as far as the PDM is concerned, considering of course that we've seen this in the past, and how will, in your opinion, effective in terms of strategy against the government? Of course, now there's also talk, there has been, a talk of no confidence motion against who in particular, there's the talk of three key figures, all of those things. How do you see the situation?
I think this time the situation is really challenging as compared to if you compare it to a few months back when the PDM was struggling to come up with a unified narrative against the government, and it was blamed to be a friendly opposition, making no effective moves to challenge the real, to pose real challenge to the government working. Now I think the most important thing is 3-4 important events that led to this instability and the vulnerability of the current government. One was the Balochistan, the resignation of the CM of Balochistan, and then there was a much controversy which was not foreseen, and also the DGISI appointment was another important matter, though it was a legal process to follow, but how the statements from the ruling government started to create confusion in the whole, and then we have this Daska election, rigging, which was the, Election Commission of Pakistan came up with reports, and then EVM, which was now
which is still an issue, like a huge issue as far as the government is concerned, and we've seen the Prime Minister come up again and again and talk about how it's really important for the government and the opposition to come together on this issue because of the sanctity of elections, the legitimacy of it, and all of that, which is one of the main things as far as the PDM is concerned. Certainly the PDM.
But I think the most important thing is the government, when there's a ruling party in the country, it always has challenges, a lot of challenges all the time. I think there are parliamentary ways to negotiate and come forward, and they come to a conclusion where the stability is ensured. The PDM is most likely to be in the streets, but rather than going to the parliamentary routes, which is more important, more stable, and more more democratic way.
You're saying that oppose the government, criticize the government in the parliament, don't resort to street agitation, which is what this is. Okay, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Rana Ehsan. Rana Sahib, overall, one interesting word that Amir Hussain used here is unified narrative. When you talk about unified narrative, in the past we've seen, of course, an amalgamation, a unity of these political parties is unnatural. I think maybe a word one can use, but you've maintained, and the PDM has maintained, that in the interests of the people of this country, the parties have come together, PMLN and PPP primarily. But do you think you can now have that kind of unified narrative and stick to it?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you. Even the last time PDM unified on 26 points, which ranged from foreign policy to establishment working within the constitution ambit, and there were multiple other freedom for press, judiciary being independent. So we unified on those 26 points. And right now, currently, we feel that the inflationary trend,
what led to the problem, let me just interject here, what led to the problem was, of course, the issue of resignations in the assembly, as far as the PPP walking out of the PDM is concerned.
So what led to the problem was People's Party going behind the scenes and, trying to get the leader of opposition seat in the Senate. That is what led to the problem, and that is what led to the show cause notice being given to the People's Party. So
there is no disagreement on the issue of resignations.
Of course, that was another issue, but before that issue became the reason for breaking away, this issue preceded it. So that was also an issue of conflict between People's Party and PDM.
Okay.
Yes. So now I think the way the direction of the economy is, how the government handling management, governance, and a directionless government, we feel that it is the right time to start a campaign against the government in front of the people, with the people. And hence we have started this campaign, and we feel that in the parliament we already have united opposition, and probably, as it seems, that even it is a huge possibility that in the coming days maybe People's Party will also join PTM in its movement against this government. So yes, the opposition seems to be uniting, and we feel that in any way the chances for a general election are rising, and if nothing else, this would act as a campaign for the coming election.
But isn't it better, in your opinion, to let the government continue for its tenure and then go to the people for for their mandate, because your party is the one that has been crying, talking about the legitimacy of the elections. Your party has been talking about selected, that has been very much a PMLN narrative.
I think the reason why PDM has become more active is because if we let the government complete its tenure, the economy maybe can get to a point of no return, and then it would pose a huge challenge for the coming governments to turn it around. So we feel that by each
so you're essentially doing this for the coming government, which you may be a part of.
We're doing this because the economy is at a nosedive. We're doing this because, we don't want it to reach a point of no return, that we cannot, things are so bad, and we feel that the people will not forgive us if we do not start these campaigns on the streets, do jalsas all across Pakistan, and give a tough time to this government, because this government is giving a tough time to the common man. So
okay, I will come back to you. Let me go to Ghazala Saifi. Ghazala, the people will not forgive the PMLN, the PDM, according to Rana Saab, if they don't come out, if they don't march, if they don't plead the cause of the people, the economy is in shambles, all of those things. How would you respond to that?
Thank you, Mahrukh, for calling me to this program. But repeatedly, I've been hearing all these kind of irrelevant and these false allegations against Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government. We've seen where at the lowest ebb, when they talk about taking the country to the lowest economic ebb, they already had left it in a very low economic situation, where the Prime Minister had to struggle and get it back on its track, which still is quite a struggle going on. And then you see they made their own homes, they tried to do all sorts of corruption, they were seen doing all sorts of naughty things around, and now PMLN itself is not on the same page, as the leadership is divided within itself. People's Party is waiting that if they take any stronghold in the public, only then will they join it. So their stance is also not very clear to start with. So I don't understand why they are trying to, confuse people of Pakistan, and they want to bring them to a level where there will be a situation of anarchy within the country.
Ghazala, do you think that
I don't think they're loyal to the
Okay,
cause. I
let me
don't think
just
they're loyal to
add,
the people. I don't think
let me-
ever thought of the real rights of the people, even inside the parliament or outside. We don't
Okay,
see
fair enough.
any kind of integration
Ghazala, do
within
you
the
think
people.
that they will be able to find, considering the climate of the country at this time? I'm sure you agree, and we've had the Prime Minister come out again, time and again, and talk about inflation, price hike. The committees have been summoned. There has been across the board concern. We've seen the rising dollar. Today, I think it's again at a record high, shot up to 5 rupees or so, devaluation, all of those things. In your opinion, do you think that in today's climate, there is some danger that they will be able to find the kind of support in the people of this country that perhaps they didn't in the past?
You see, the large population of people, the common man, understands that what the country has gone through during the pandemic and otherwise. And Prime Minister Imran Khan is an honest Prime Minister, which we have not experienced in years. So, I mean, if Prime Minister Imran Khan has been looking into the matter of people compensation, providing them this new package which just came about less than 2 weeks ago, to provide them a major package in ration and otherwise, so that the poor man or the people with low salaries are below 30,000 rupees are able to get some kind of a compensation through a concessional ration scheme. All those things are happening. You see how COVID has been handled by our government. I mean, internationally, there is no other country before us except for maybe one or two which have been able to tackle, and they were much smaller than us. So with a large population like Pakistan, we've been able to handle the pandemic in a very good way, and we have not been able to get unsuccessful on this spot, because this was one thing.
What is this talk of low confidence motion that is at this time doing the rounds?
What?
What is this talk? What is this, what is being said as far as the no confidence motion is concerned, that's doing the rounds at this time? How concerning is it for you?
Well, it's not concerning at all, because People's Party and PMLN are not on the same page. Repeatedly, I would say that PMLN itself is divided, does not have the strength or integrity left within the leadership to come up as a strong leader to bring protests in the country. They have no one as such within the lines to know exactly who is the leader of the PMLN. So it's just a fake. It's just a fake face that they're keeping up.
But we are seeing Maulana Fazlur Rahman talk to the former Prime Minister himself. So if it, and according, it seems to be he is the leader as far as the PMLN is.
Maulana Fazlur Rahman is bichara, is like he is suffering from delusional. He's quite delusional since the time that he hasn't got a seat for himself. And because of his delusional situation, the circumstances which he wants to create within the country are very aberrant through his behavior. So I don't blame him, because Maulana Fazlur Rahman cannot be blamed, because he has had power and he thinks that power is his fort, and he has been denied that. And people have not given him a chance again to be a leader of the people. So he can be saying whatever he has to. People have refused to give him any importance as far as any leadership is concerned.
Okay. So I will come back to you. Let me go to Amir Hussain Saab. Ji, Amir Saab, overall, do you think that at this time, again, the government is saying that Ghazala Sahiba, she's saying that the PMLN leadership is divided. If it were to find the kind of if it was not, for example, divided, and we've seen Maulana Saab talk to Nawaz Sharif himself. If he is the one leading from the PMLN and there isn't a division, how concerning do you think is it, keeping that aside, how concerning is it as this talk of no confidence? Because, we are, as far as the numbers are concerned, they're certainly not favorable for the government at this time. And we've had time and again this discussion about how the way for this government, the way forward for this government may have been different if they had had the kind of majority they would have liked. And they hadn't had to deal with allied parties, they hadn't had to, ally their fares, all of those things. We've had the MQM come out, the PMLQ say time and again that they have reservations. So in that kind of a situation, how concerning do you think is it?
Well, I think the most important challenge is coming from within the ruling alliance, right? The most important, the fundamental thing is is coming forward, because there was a narrative coming from Nawaz Sharif from 2-3 years, and there was a narrative coming from PDM, and the Pakistan People's Party was more into parliamentary ways. But given all that situation, right now, the electoral politics is all about pragmatism, right? Okay. So the people who are part of the ruling party, the ruling government, the ministers of MQM, Q, and others, they think that they cannot go to the extent to displace their voters on the ground, because price hike, inflation, economic meltdown, all these things contribute to a lot of things that will, the candidates fear of losing their favor, in their constituencies. So the pragmatism also taking them out of the alliance, it seems like that they are not agreeing with the government on many things. So it's a situation where they
also perhaps the government is forced to then agree to concessions they would not have liked to if they weren't in this position, certainly.
Absolutely. So this is a very fragile alliance, and now the PDM is trying to make most out of this the chaos within the ruling party. And but still, I mean, the government, the PDM and the People's Party are not coming to terms on many things. They have initial negotiation and trying to come to terms. Okay, if we are not the same on the street, we are at least same in the parliament, so we can go for the no confidence motion. And they were talking about.
But Reza Zala is saying that there is division there. They don't have that kind of. And we've seen in the past also. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Rana Ehsan Afzal. There's no denying the fact that as a joint opposition strategy, as a joint opposition, you have suffered because of your disunity, because of whatever the reasons may be. You said that the PPP went and the Senate election was one of a bone of contention, or whether it was the issue of resignations, all of those things. But that has definitely been a huge factor in in the larger failure of earlier PDM protests. Do you think there is a chance that that can happen again, or do you think that now you have sufficient common ground, you have sufficient, understanding, you have reached or you will reach between the PPP and the PMLN?
Mahrukh, before I respond to that, let me quickly respond to Sethi Saiba's points that she raised. She says that PMLN left the economy at the worst point in time. That is not true. Let's talk about the circular debt, which was at 1.1 trillion. Today it is at 2.4 trillion, and there seems to be no stopping it. The corruption perception index states that this government stands at 124 points. That is down by 8 points, meaning that corruption has increased during the PTI tenure. The loans, the debt of this country, the public debt, has increased by 16,000 billion rupees in the last 3.5 years, 3.25 years, versus what was 10,000 billion rupees in the last PMLN 5 years. So the GDP growth, which was at 5.8 in 2018, the World Bank is stating that projecting a 3.4% growth for Pakistan in its fourth year. So that is far worse than where we left at. We have the worst performing currency. The poverty levels have increased by 15 to 20% by different, analysis of different economists. The unemployment levels are rising, and we have 17% inflation stated by the sensitivity price index recently, which is highest in the region. So if
Rana
anyone
Sahib, I will,
is
I will let
delusional-
Ghazala answer the, sticks you've thrown at her, and she will of course throw hers. The point is, in my question is whether you can find the kind of, because you need the support of the people. If you want to go on the streets to build momentum, there is no denying that you need the support of the people. And that didn't really happen the last time, the way that the PDM would have liked. So the simple question is, you think that you will be able to find that support? You will be able to find, you will be able to get the people to come out? You will be able to get them to support your cause? Or you think, like Ghazala is saying, she's saying that the people understand
Now
what
to
the
specifically-
government came into, the people understand what they've been grappling with, and they probably will not be able to give you the kind of support you're hoping for.
No, they will be. Look at
Okay.
what is happening right now. Their own coalition partners are raising issues with the government, which was not happening before. So why are they doing that? They're doing that because of all the things I've just counted. And there is no direction towards the economy. The people are in trouble. They can't make their monthly budget. So these are the reasons why this time it is going to be a success.
Okay,
And
Rana
it-
sir,
it
can
is
I
a
ask
job.
you?
It is a
I
job.
just want to ask you one, question before I go to Ghazala. We talk about the people, the people of this country, and that the people are suffering, and the people are not getting anything. What has in your opinion, what has the PMLN done for the people of this country in opposition in the assembly for the last 3 years?
We have exposed the policies of this government time and again. We have offered them charter of economy. We have offered them to sit for electoral reforms, which they denied and wanted to bulldoze their own. We have guided them each time during their budget on how bad the budgets were. So we have done whatever the opposition has to do. This is the job.
Why are you
of the
so
opposition.
opposed to the issue of EVMs?
Okay, so EVMs, number one, are not rigging proof, they are not manipulation proof, they are not tampering proof, and then you cannot even do a manual rechecking for them. And EVMs take almost 20 to 25 years to implement. We have an example of India. So wherever they've been implemented, there is so we are not against it. The Electoral Act of 2017 included EVMs. And it is the ECP who has to slowly, do pilot projects and extend it over time and do trials with it. It is an impossibility and unpracticability that you implement EVM in 1.5 years. I don't know why. It's a childish demand of this government.
So other than the fact, in your opinion, that it is being hurried through, primarily you're not against the concept, you're not against the fact that they should perhaps be brought in.
Last point. Electoral reforms can only happen with consensus. If there is no consensus, electoral reforms are useless. So there is no consensus with the current government. They have not even tried. Their own coalition partners have issues with it, which exposes the fact that this government is not interested in having a debate. It is not interested in even taking their coalition partners along, leave alone the opposition. So how can you go for electoral reform?
I have to go to Ghazala. I will come back to you. Ghazala, in your opinion, we've heard this whole thing, as far as the PMLN is concerned, the electoral reform. Of course, they've always said that it interests them enormously. It is something that they want. They don't want, that whole narrative of vote ko izzat do, which is what the PMLN has been talking about consistently. They've been attributing the, selected narrative, all of that. Why do you think they're not coming forward now to support the government on the issue of electoral reform? Have you tried sufficiently, as far as the government is concerned, have they tried sufficiently to take the opposition jointly on board? Or do you think that perhaps, there has been a lack of effort also from the government?
Well, Mahrukh, I believe that I have to answer to Mr. Rana.
Please go ahead.
Something like he said that there is more corruption now than it was before. So is there a comparison between corruption? I'm sorry, the Prime Minister, who's not a corrupt politician, who has not encouraged any kind of misappropriation as such, and who has also removed his very close friend from being a part of a political movement which he was a part of throughout, because of the allegations that came against him. Also, you can see what is happening. Being People's Party, I mean, have a look at Sindh, have a look at Karachi, have a look at the tons and tons of sugar which was hoarded by Mr. Zardari and was not put in the market so that the prices could go high. I mean, all sorts of hoarding of meat and other basic essentials are done in Sindh. Sindh government is not interested in providing the levels of lifestyle of people of Pakistan. And then they talk about people. They have not been able to provide them with basic necessities. All the Kachi Abadis were turned into localities which, like Machar Colony, you can have a look and see, are they livable places? Are these the places where people can breathe? Are these the places just to not provide people with houses or any sort of facility? They have done it in the past and they will continue to do it in the future. The rural-urban divide was done by Pakistan People's Party, and because of 18th Amendment, which they are clinging on to as if it's some sort of a thing which they cannot get themselves cut off from, because that they feel is the only solace they have, and because of that they have not been able, even though they have the 18th Amendment, a powerful presence in Sindh, they have not been able to provide facilities to the poor man. Poor are as poor as they were 20 years ago. They have, nothing has changed. The poorest of the poor are becoming worse. They have really gone down. And you can see, I mean, when they talk about poverty, why don't they look up at Sindh? Sindh is the biggest sufferer. I live in Karachi. I know how things are.
We don't unfortunately have anyone from the PPP at
I
this time.
remind the people of Karachi, they voted for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and they are still supporting Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and they will support Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf even after these 5 years. You will see there will be more votes coming in for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf in the next election. So this is all drama that we are creating, that we will go out on the streets only if PMLN is able to take momentum. The PMLN will never be able to get momentum in their jalsas. And also people will come and have a look at what they are saying, the rubbish that they are trying to tell the world. That, you know,
Mazala, are you not, I mean, isn't the government concerned about the price hike, inflation, devaluation,
and
all of
about
those
the electoral reforms, Mahrukh, please let me just answer back on this also. Electoral reform is coming from the opposition since before 2018. Now this word is not a part of the opposition's dictionary. They come to the parliament, they consider parliament to be the most supreme institution, and when they come to the parliament, they just listen to the speech of Bilawal. When he arrives, they clap. They listen to the speech. They listen to the speech of one or two of their leaders, and all of them walk out. What about the public money that is wasted in those sessions? Do they ever talk about the millions of rupees that are wasted during the sessions? Do they care about the people's money? The mandate that they have got as an opposition member, they are supposed to deliver for the people. They have no agenda to support the people, except they just want to do jugglery with the government and want to come back into power to have more corrupt practices and have learned better how to go ahead with the same kind of corrupt practices which they have been able to, openly do throughout their last tenures. So, and they have not been able to realize that Imran Khan is now the leader of Pakistan. He is the renowned man all over Ummah, all over the country, outside, and people are respecting Pakistan more than they were at the time of when Nawaz Sharif went off as one of the most corrupt politicians of Pakistan.
Okay, Zala, let me come back to you. One of the things that Zala is talking about, she's saying that, there is, as far as the parliamentary itself, the politics of parliamentary procedure at this time, we haven't seen the opposition come up, according to her, and support the government or talk about issues that actually are important for the people of the country. Why don't they do that? I think that's a fair point. We haven't seen whether the opposition or the government government, as far as there is this back and forth exchange which always goes on as far as the government and the opposition is concerned, with the government saying that they are trying their best to engage with the opposition saying, well, they're not trying at all. But that does, we haven't had the kind of conducive, the kind of, we would like, the kind of debate the people of this country would like on core issues that really relate to them. It doesn't happen like that. There doesn't seem to be any history of that happening. Why do you think so?
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And she is right, because this is not happening right now. The real politics that the opposition parties are doing is mostly trying to strike deal with the powers rather than going to the people. Right now, you see the PDM jalsas, you don't see this enthusiasm and this motivation of people coming out and saying, yes, we are behind you, because they are not going to people on the street as well. But in the parliament, where you have a number of reforms that can be taken place with the unanimity, with unanimous, actions, and also coming to terms on larger national issues that matter to the people of Pakistan. For example, the fair elections, transparency.
But Amrit, that's also like generally the way that our politics is structured. An average member is not really too pushed or too bothered about the strategy of what the people want, or whether he can actually work, or how much leeway does he really have to work towards any reform, or to table the kind of bills that they would like, or to put in the kind of effort that his constituents would then like. So we have this kind of the kind of form that our politics has taken is really just toeing to the party line, whichever party it is.
Absolutely, that's true. I mean, there's a larger governance agenda, the governance reform agenda that has to come in. For example, one of the most important pressing need right now to strengthen democracy is to go for the local elections. Strengthen the local governance structure, where people have this this whole channel, where common people can participate in politics. The citizens can not only participate but also come to the leadership role in the politics. So there are ways to improve the political process. After 18th Amendment, we were hoping that the government, this power will further devolve to the local level, but it didn't happen. It stopped at the provincial and the CM level. So I think that is the problem. The institutional.
But that's the question, right? And I will go to Ghazala with this. But the issues of reform is something that the people were really looking to the PTI government.
Absolutely.
For. Whether you talk about local government, or you talk about electoral reform, or you talk about judicial reform, there has been, the expectation has been very high. I would say historically so.
Absolutely, but the opposition must also come forward with the people's agenda. I mean, okay, you are against the government. It makes sense for opposition. Every opposition has to be opposed.
But they're saying that they're going to the streets for the people's agenda.
But I think there are different forums. So the one forum is the parliament, where how many times you are talking about the people's agenda, like the reforms. Like, who is talking about the local governance? In Sindh, People's Party is holding government, right? So are they going for the local governance reforms? They are not going to do that. And elsewhere, where the PTI government is, I mean, the political structure is such that the people's agenda remain buried in the real politics, and that is the problem.
Right, okay. Rana Ehsan Sahab, there is overall a lack of, the government hasn't, if you talk about the government, the opposition also hasn't really, stood up and talked about the issues relating to the people of the country within the parliament. You haven't seen the kind of, there doesn't seem to be an alternative. You criticize the economic policy of the government, but there doesn't seem to be an alternative coming from the PMLN. So what do you think the people are going to look to? Do you think that there is any expectation that things will get better regardless of who is running the affairs, when there is no alternative being offered? The people are not being shown that, well, we wouldn't have gone to the IMF, or does anybody really, any other government at this time really have the option of not going? So, whichever government it is, whether you are in power or any other government, what are the options available at this time?
Firstly, I would like to disagree that, we have not been raising the problems of the people in the parliament. We have been doing that. And it is not the job of the opposition to run the parliament. It is the Treasury bench's job to make sure, it is the government's job to make sure that the parliament runs smoothly. But sadly, when we have pointed out their flaws with their governance, the ruckus has has been created by the government, and the performance of the assembly has been heard. Now, coming to your question, that what can we do right now? We have been suggesting throughout that right now we feel that with the current situation that the government has come to economically, we have to go to the IMF. That is my personal point of view. But we have to negotiate a better deal with them. And the delay is damaging Pakistan like it did the last time. Last time, for example, they delayed going to the IMF, number one. Number two, when they went to the IMF, they changed the finance minister during the agreement, which is unprecedented. And we probably signed the worst agreement possible in the history of signing agreements with IMF, and that resulted into the nosedive of the economy. And right now, for example, I think the priority of the government should be to control the falling rupee, and that is what the finance minister has even said. He has said that the state bank governor should not have said what he said in London about the dollar and the rupee, and that the real value of the dollar should be 162, 163. So, but today he confessed, and the government should be doing something about it. Similarly, the polarization that is currently existing in the political scenario has to end. You cannot ignore the opposition. You cannot just, switch them off. You have to talk to them when you want electoral reforms. You have to talk to them if you want Charter of Economy, which we suggested the first year.
Ji, Shahzala, I'll let you answer that. According to Rana Saab, the opposition has largely been ignored. You haven't taken them on board on issues of electoral reform, on issues relating to the people. The government hasn't sufficiently extended itself. Of course, that responsibility does come to the government because you are in power at this time.
Mahrukh, the thing is that government has constantly tried to have some kind of a relationship with the opposition, but the opposition is in a complete state of denial. They have still, after 3 years, not been able to accept Prime Minister Imran Khan as the Prime Minister of Pakistan. These two parties are still in a state of denial where they feel that these are the only two parties that exist, and these are the only two parties who have the right to govern this country. People have rejected that. Very few countries have got this history of selecting the third party as their party to govern their country. So people have rejected these two parties compared to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, which they have not been able to accept. Now, as far as electoral reforms are concerned, consistently they have been asked. It's been more than a year that they have been in the parliament. It was raised initially, and they rejected it outrightly. They have not been able to come to terms with the reality that the times have changed. According to Mr. Rana Afzal, he just said, European countries have taken more than 25 years to understand this whole dynamics of EVM machines. But are we not going to start off anew? Are we not going to start off with a modern technique of getting the election results for the people, so that people are not in a real, the nation does not break up into 2 or 3 groups, and they have fights for more than 2 years related to the results of election. So it's in the interest of not just Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. These reforms are in the interest of all the parties, and the results which come after so many millions and billions of rupees spent in the election process, the results should be acceptable to all. Therefore, a neutral system of electoral system or electoral reforms have to be introduced, and they are not coming up with a better solution for what is being given by our party and by the government. If they offer something better, they say no, continue with the same system of election. It can't be. The same system of election brings anarchy within the country right after the election. Instead of people jubilating for what the results are, they are criticizing, they are in fierce fights, there is a division within the country.
The government also needs the opposition at this time, the numbers being what they are.
Whoever comes the next champion or maybe the next leader of the country, and then there is no rest left between the parties. then they take their decision. So for that, they have not come up with any modern solution, with any solution that will work out for the people of Pakistan. Talking about the people of Pakistan is something which is a record which has broken. So we need to know exactly what they want for the people of Pakistan, which they have not been able to relate to as far as electoral reform.
Whether we go into that debate of who didn't ask who, the question is that it's remained, the government needs the opposition, it needs its allied parties. Yeah. Isn't that the situation at this time on the ground? As far as the parliament is concerned, the numbers are concerned.
Yes, we do need them, but they are not willing to compromise for the people of Pakistan. When they talk, in one sentence, they talk about people of Pakistan 10 times, but they are not able to bring up any solution as far as electoral reforms are concerned. We have to come up with the judicial reforms, we have to come up with the electoral reforms. No matter whatever issue that one touches, they have an issue now to solve that. So how does one come to terms with the reality that this is an issue and it has to be resolved? So the opposition will also have to come forward in the interest of the people of Pakistan, not in the interest of their own political party or PTI or anybody else, but for the general consensus has to come in.
She's very much, she makes a good point. Everybody has to come together, but there are ways to do that. The government has to initiate the dialogue with the spirit that now when they are facing a lot of challenges in terms of doing new legislation, for example, for electoral reforms you need legislation, for any larger national issue if you want to go forward with, if you want to be successful, then you need legislation. First, to win the confidence of your own allies. The different parties in the alliance also say that many things they don't share with us, so we know through the television and all that. But this is some sort of coming together, building some confidence, and also it is the role of opposition to stage their protest at two levels. One is, of course, as an opposition as always does. The another is to push government to do those reforms which have larger people-centric interest for the country, for example. Because
there's always been talk of having a super agenda, sort of, whether it's economic or charter, or you talk about other issues that are above the politics.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, we haven't been able to come to that as far as the opposition and the government is concerned.
Absolutely.
There's always dragging down to
there has to be a common ground. The common ground must be driven by the interests of the people of this country. So who will serve the interests of people? It is opposition, the government, both, but they have to set aside some of the urgent supra-political narratives to come forward and say that this is the common ground where we are going to serve the interests of the common people.
And it doesn't matter where we are politically.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Amir Hussain, thank you for being with us. Sana Ihsan Abdul Khan, thank you for joining us today. Ghazala Saifi, thank you for making the time. As far as the issue of overall the government and the opposition is concerned, certainly it will come, we will know in the next couple of months how effective the PDM and their strategy is, against the government, whether it will form a unified, whether they will have a unified narrative, whether they will stick to that kind of unified narrative they seem to be moving towards, or whether it will fail or not as in the past. But more than that, it seems that the government, of course, needs to perhaps, take their allies, take stock of their own numbers, take stock of where they are as far as their own relationship with the government and the opposition is concerned, and whether they can at this time have that kind of working relationship, or is it too late now to hope for there to be that kind of relationship that can then be driven towards any of the reforms, whether we talk about electoral reforms, or we talk about judicial reforms, or we talk about the issue of EVMs related to electoral reform, all of those things. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining us today.